Welcome everyone to this deep dive into global contact narratives, where encounters from every corner of the world reveal uncanny similarities and cultural twists. It's like we're crossing from one continent to another in search of that universal language of contact.
Yep, absolutely. So these accounts, whether they're from Zimbabwe, Brazil, or even Japan, they seem to share certain core experiences, right? Like telepathic communication and encounters with beings from beyond.
Right, indeed. Exactly. And it's fascinating how across all these different cultures, from indigenous tribes to modern urban settings, the way these encounters are communicated ends up being eerily consistent.
Yeah, I mean, take the aerial school incident in Zimbabwe. Over 60 children, now adults, have maintained a consistent testimony for decades. That's not something you hear about every day.
That case is a cornerstone of these kinds of narratives. It really shows that these experiences aren't just fleeting or easily dismissed. When you have children speaking with such clarity, both then and now, it challenges the typical dismissive ideas of confabulation.
Definitely, it adds serious weight to the phenomenon. And what's interesting is that those experiences, like the environmental messages they received, tie into deep traditional connections with nature that are characteristic of African spiritual aesthetics.
Exactly. It's almost like nature itself is warning us about our ecological missteps. Right. Now, shifting our focus to Brazil's Varginha Incident, we see another layer of complexity. Multiple witnesses, military involvement, and even alien-themed tourism later on.
Yeah, that whole transformation into a UFO tourism hotspot is remarkable. I mean, the encounter involved descriptions of beings with red eyes, and then the military steps in, which pushes the narrative from personal experience into a potential state-sponsored cover-up.
And that intersection between military interest and public curiosity really fuels the debate. Now let's talk about the Travis Walton case from Arizona in 1975. It's a prime example of the American abduction narrative. Beam of light, 5-day disappearance, and then a mysterious return with disoriented testimony.
Oh, absolutely. It's almost like a script straight out of science fiction, but with real witnesses who even passed polygraph tests. Yes. And those 6 coworkers witnessing the initial event add another layer of credibility to what might otherwise have been dismissed as hallucination.
Of the craft, the missing time, it's all part of a consistent narrative emerging across different cases. Then we have the Westall school incident in Australia, which predates the aerial school event by nearly 3 decades. Over 200 witnesses, mostly students and teachers, reported a silvery disc hovering above their schoolyard.
And the rapid military response really spices things up here, don't you think? I do. Although I must say, sometimes I wonder if the pressure on the witnesses to remain silent afterward might have skewed some of what was reported.
That's a fair point, but the fact that so many maintained their narrative over the years speaks volumes about their genuine experience. Absolutely. And then there's the case of Captain Kenju Terauchi on JAL Flight 1628. His encounter, corroborated by crew and radar data, is one of the most credible pilot sightings on record.
Right, and what's fascinating is how his Japanese cultural background allowed for a more open description of the event without the stigma seen in Western circles. The cultural lens is so important here. While Western interpretations often lean toward technological skepticism or fear, Eastern and Indigenous accounts, like those from Australia's Aboriginal traditions and Japan's historical records, sometimes perceive these events as part of a cosmic or spiritual continuum.
It really illustrates how culture shapes perception, doesn't it? Absolutely. It's like our background sets the stage for what we experience and how we interpret it. For instance, in Indigenous Australian traditions, encounters with Wandjina sky beings or Min lights have been part of their cultural fabric.
Yeah, that continuity is really striking when you compare ancient accounts with modern ones. And what about the Russian Voronezh Incident of 1989? It's intriguing how state organizations took such events seriously enough to document them officially.
Yes, the controlled but systematic reporting by Soviet institutions really contrasts with the more polarized reactions in the West. Right, and this approach allowed for a different kind of scientific inquiry, one that often avoided the sensationalism and focused instead on what we might call cosmophysical aspects
Interesting how different
of the
governments
phenomenon.
choose to frame these unexplained events. Speaking of scientific inquiry, there's been a shift toward interdisciplinary research recently, hasn't there? We're not just looking at personal testimonies anymore, but also physical trace analysis, neuroscience, and even pattern recognition across global
Exactly. Combining
databases.
anthropology with hard science is the next step. It's like putting together pieces of a cosmic jigsaw puzzle, where every culture provides a unique piece. And let's not forget the thematic consistencies emerging from these accounts. Environmental concerns, warnings about technology, even genetic interests. There's a sort of universal message being transmitted.
It's almost eerie, isn't it? That despite all our differences, some messages just keep coming through. Yeah, it really begs the question. Are these themes a projection of our own anxieties? Or is there something external transmitting these warnings?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it challenges conventional scientific explanations, which mostly lean towards psychological or sociocultural interpretations. I sometimes find it frustrating, though, that while the testimonies are so rich and detailed, there's still so much we can't empirically verify.
True, but I'd argue that the longevity and consistency of accounts like those from the Ariel School provide more than a few hints. They demand more rigorous, cross-disciplinary investigation. Right, and even if certain details vary slightly due to cultural interpretation, what one witness calls a metallic craft, another might describe as a cosmic vessel, the core experiences remain consistent.
It's like the phenomenon speaks a language beyond our words, and our cultural filters just add subtitles. Exactly. And the documentary revisits, like with the 2022 Aerial Phenomenon film, how these narratives hold up over decades. The children, now adults, are still unwavering in their accounts.
Yeah, that really underlines that these aren't just fleeting dreams or memory slips, they're deeply ingrained experiences. Then there's the impact on public and even government perceptions. In Brazil, for instance, the Varginha Incident shifted media narratives from sensationalism to serious investigative reporting as military involvement was acknowledged.
Yep, and it even transformed the local economy with UFO-themed tourism. It shows how contact narratives can reshape cultural identity and economic landscapes. Let's dive a bit into how contact experiences are interpreted differently. For example, in Western accounts, encounters are often viewed through a lens of technological fear, maybe even a threat. But in Eastern interpretations, there's sometimes an emphasis on spiritual growth or cosmic consciousness.
While I sometimes think, can we really separate the two? In many ways, they both reflect concerns of modern society, albeit from different angles. And then there are Indigenous perspectives, where such experiences are woven into ancestral narratives. It's interesting that what might be dismissed as folklore by some is, for many, a living reality echoed in rock art and oral histories.
Absolutely, and these accounts often predate modern UFO tales by thousands of years, which challenges the idea that such encounters are just a byproduct of our contemporary era. Now, considering all these perspectives, what do you think is the next logical step for researchers?
Well, I'd say fostering interdisciplinary collaboration is key. Neuroscientists, anthropologists, and even data scientists need to come together to bridge the gap between personal testimony and objective analysis. I agree, but I do have a slight critique here. While cross-disciplinary efforts sound promising, sometimes the methodologies themselves can be at odds. For instance, how do we reconcile subjective narrative formation with hard statistical pattern recognition?
That's a great point. It's a delicate balancing act, but if we're honest, isn't that what makes the study of anomalous experiences so challenging and exciting? Totally. It's like trying to merge art and science. Each field brings its own insights while also facing inherent limitations. But the quest to understand these experiences could very well help us uncover new aspects of human consciousness.
Exactly. It could revolutionize not just our understanding of UFOs, but of our very perception of reality. Speaking of perception, there's so much to unpack on how narrative formation influences public belief. The idea that our cultural frameworks shape the details of what we report is really profound.
Yes, it's like each narrative is a mirror reflecting our collective hopes, fears, and even environmental anxieties. And on that note, the themes in these encounters, like environmental warnings and caution about unchecked technology, resonate across continents.
Right, it's as if the phenomenon, however you interpret it, is urging us to pay attention to our impact on the planet. I mean, when you listen to these accounts, you often hear an undercurrent of concern about nuclear weapons or ecological decay. It's almost like the messages are coded warnings that speak to our current global challenges.
Yep, that thematic consistency is hard to ignore. Then, looping back to the methodologies, researchers are now looking at physical trace evidence, from altered soil to unusual plant growth around landing sites, alongside advanced imaging studies of
that
witness
combination of
grains.
physical and psychological data is really promising. It moves us beyond debate into measurable science. And we can't overlook how statistical analyses and pattern recognition in global databases are starting to reveal correlations that mere anecdotal evidence might have missed.
It's like connecting dots on a worldwide scale. Huge potential for a new conceptual framework. Right. As these investigations evolve, we may well be on the verge of developing frameworks that transcend current paradigms of belief versus skepticism.
Yeah, and it might help break down the polarized viewpoints we've seen so far. I'm really curious about how, in the future, these interdisciplinary teams might approach the subjective nature of personal experience while maintaining rigorous scientific standards.
It's like opening a dialogue between the heart and the lab bench, melding personal truth with hard evidence. Absolutely. And that's perhaps the ultimate challenge, to honor these profound personal encounters without dismissing them, even as we insist on empirical validation.
Right on. That balance is what truly makes this field both fascinating and incredibly human. So stepping back, what do you think this all means for our understanding of both the universe and ourselves?
It suggests that our consciousness is intricately linked to the cosmos. These encounters push us to reevaluate not just what might be out there, but how we perceive and shape our reality from within. In many ways, these global stories of contact serve as a mirror to our own collective psyche. They challenge us to think beyond established scientific and cultural norms and to embrace mysteries as opportunities for growth.
Exactly. It truly is a journey into the unknown, urging us to be like both brave and open-minded. In the end, whether we interpret these encounters as messages from another world or as reflections of our inner consciousness, one thing remains clear. The phenomenon of contact is a universal mystery that cuts across time, culture, and space.
Couldn't have said it better. Here's to unraveling one of humanity's most enduring enigmas, one conversation at a time.